Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive into modern Indian history. For those following along for UPSC prep or just because you love history like we do, this is part 2 of our series.
And this time, we're zeroing in on a vital component of any democracy, the press in India after 1947.
That's right. In our last deep dive, we explored the evolution of institutions in India after independence.
And today, we'll see how the press grew, the challenges it faced, and the immense impact it had.
The source guiding us on this journey is m18.pdf. It's chock full of insights and historical facts about the Indian press after independence.
It does have a bit of promotional material.
Yeah, but we'll stick to the historical facts and analysis, like always.
Imagine a newly independent India finding its footing, and the press is right there in the thick of it.
It's a story of growth, challenges, and an impact that echoes to this day.
It all starts with the foundation, freedom of the press. India took a bold step by enshrining this as a fundamental right in its constitution.
Bold indeed. Why was that so important? Couldn't they have just assumed, that a free press was a given in a democracy?
Well, putting it right there in the Constitution, it elevates press freedom. It's not just an assumption. It's a cornerstone of Indian democracy. You see, a vibrant democracy needs informed citizens who can access diverse viewpoints and hold the government accountable. That's where a free press comes in.
So it's not just about journalists having the right to publish. It's about empowering the people.
Exactly. And that's what fueled the boom in print media in those early years. Remember names like the Times of India and the Hindu?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can picture those printing presses churning, newspapers flying off the stands.
What
What a time to be in journalism, eh?
It really was. But there was something else happening that was even more remarkable: the growth of regional language newspapers.
That's fascinating, especially in a country as linguistically diverse as India. Tell us more about how the regional press flourished.
It was amazing. Think of newspapers in Hindi, Tamil, Bengali, Telugu, Malayalam, so many languages. This meant that information wasn't just for those who could read English. A far wider audience could engage.
A powerful example of inclusivity in action, not just in words.
And then there were the journalists themselves. They became watchdogs, committed to exposing corruption and championing social justice. These individuals truly embodied the pursuit of truth.
Wow, it's like a movie. Reporters chasing leads, facing down threats, shining a light on stories that others wanted buried. Were there any specific examples from that era that stand out?
So many. These were individuals who put their safety on the line to bring the truth to light. They faced censorship, restrictions, even physical attacks. But their dedication, it never wavered.
It makes you realize that freedom of the press isn't just an idea. It's about real people doing courageous work.
Absolutely. And on top of all of this, we had major technological advancements happening. Think about how those impacted the press.
Oh, yeah. The world was changing rapidly.
Things like offset printing and photo typesetting revolutionized printing and distribution. Suddenly, newspapers could reach even larger audiences.
What a game changer in terms of reach and speed. And then came, of course, the internet.
Exactly. The internet ushered in a whole new world of online news portals and digital platforms. It's amazing to look back and see how each wave of technology reshaped the way news was produced and consumed.
From printing presses to the World Wide Web. What a journey. But the press wasn't just about churning out information, was it? It was also a platform for public discourse and debate, wasn't it?
Think of it as a space where diverse voices could engage in dialogues on critical issues. It facilitated public debates, giving different perspectives a chance to be heard. And we see this play out through interviews, panel discussions, and even talk shows, all fueled by the press.
It wasn't just about sharing information. It was about encouraging critical thinking and active engagement. And that's crucial for any nation, let alone one as young and finding its way as India was back then.
You're right. It played a huge role in shaping how democracy was taking shape in India. And it wasn't just about debate. It was also about giving voice to the marginalized and highlighting injustices.
It's where that watchdog role really shines. Holding the powerful accountable, shining a light on wrongs, and making sure voices that were often silenced could be heard.
Exactly. And our source highlights some powerful examples of this.
Oh, I'd love to hear some. What kind of issues did the press bring to light?
Oh, so many. Poverty, inequality, gender discrimination, religious conflicts, you name it. These brave journalists sparked crucial conversations that pushed for social and political change.
What courage it must have taken to tackle these sensitive issues, especially in a time of such massive social and political upheaval. And speaking of holding power accountable, how did the press monitor the government's actions and policies?
They kept a close watch. scrutinizing how leaders were doing, raising questions about policies, and investigating allegations of misconduct. They were a true watchdog.
Like holding the government's feet to the fire, making sure they stayed transparent and accountable.
Exactly. That function was key to the principles of a functioning democracy.
It makes you really appreciate the huge influence the press had. They weren't just reporting the news, they were actively shaping the nation. But of course, no story is without its challenges, right?
Yeah.
What were some obstacles the press faced in trying to stay independent?
Despite its vital role and that constitutional protection, the Indian press faced some serious hurdles. Censorship, restrictions on free speech, and even physical attacks on journalists. Real threats to press freedom.
It's scary to think about. What were the motivations behind those threats? Why would anyone want to silence the press, especially given its importance in a democracy?
It's complicated. Sometimes it was about controlling the narrative, suppressing dissenting voices, or shielding wrongdoing from the public eye.
It's a harsh reminder that freedom of the press isn't something you just get and keep. It's a constant battle, a right that demands to be defended and protected. Are there any instances of these threats that our source mentions specifically?
There are. The source talks about attempts to censor publications, legal battles fought to safeguard journalists' rights, and even cases where journalists who dared to expose the truth were met with violence.
It underscores the incredible courage and commitment it took to be a journalist during those times. So, what was done in response to these threats? Were there any efforts to protect and support the press?
Absolutely. There were some deliberate actions taken to counter those threats and ensure the press could operate freely. One key step was setting up the Press Inquiry Committee in 1947.
Now that sounds interesting. Tell me more about it. What was its purpose?
The Press Inquiry Committee was tasked with investigating press laws in India and how they impacted that fundamental right of freedom of the press. What they found was really important in shaping future legislation to safeguard and promote press freedom.
It feels like a big moment.
Yeah.
Recognizing the vital role of the press, even when it was facing these threats.
Exactly. It was a commitment to upholding the principles of a free press, even in the face of adversity.
So what kind of legislation came out of the committee's recommendations?
One that comes to mind is the Press, Objectionable Matters Act of 1951.
Ah, yes, I remember reading about that. It seemed a bit controversial. What did it actually do, and what impact did it have?
Well, this act gave the government the power to demand security from publications for anything they deemed objectionable matter.
That sounds like it could be misused to suppress dissent or criticism. Was it a step backward for press freedom?
It definitely raised concerns about how it could be misused and its impact on free expression. But it's important to note that it was only in effect from 1951 to 1956.
So a relatively short-lived measure. What happened after it was repealed?
Well, the landscape continued to evolve. In 1954, the Press Commission was formed.
Led by Justice Rajadhaksha, if I'm remembering correctly. What were some of its key recommendations, and what impact did those have on the press?
You're right, the Press Commission had a lot of influence, and one of its most important recommendations was the establishment of the All India Press Council.
The All India Press Council. That sounds like a big development. What was its role supposed to be?
Well, the All India Press Council was meant to be this body that upholds journalistic standards, promotes ethical practices, and steps in to resolve conflicts between the press and the government or the public.
So like a guardian of press freedom, a mediator, and a champion for ethical journalism all rolled into one.
That's a great way to put it. It was designed to play many roles in ensuring we have a responsible and effective press, while also protecting its independence.
It's really interesting to see how India was actively building this framework for a thriving and responsible press.
Were there any other notable legal developments that happened around this time? Yes, quite a few. Alongside the Press Objectionable Matters Act, we had the Delivering of Books and Newspapers Act of 1954, the Working Journalists Act of 1955, the Newspaper Price and Page Act of 1956, and the Parliamentary Proceedings Protection of Publications Act of 1960, all shaping the legal landscape for the press.
Wow. It sounds like the post-independence years were a flurry of activity to establish a legal framework for the press. All these laws, commissions, councils, it's a lot to digest.
It definitely was busy time, but it all boils down to striking that delicate balance. Freedom of expression on one hand, responsible journalism on the other. And that balancing act, well, it continues even today.
Right. And thinking about today, where does press freedom in India stand right now, legally speaking?
Well, currently it's rooted in Article 19A of the Constitution.
Which, of course, guarantees the right to free expression and speech, right? It's the bedrock of press freedom in India
It is. But Article 19.2 is equally important.
because it outlines certain limitations to that right.
Yes. Those limitations are designed to stop the misuse of free speech, like inciting violence or spreading hate. It's that balancing act again, protecting free expression while also safeguarding the interests of society.
That does raise a really important question. How do we make sure those limitations aren't abused to silence legitimate criticism or dissent?
It's a debate that's still going strong. Making sure the framework for press freedom is robust and protects free expression while upholding the values of a democratic society. That's a continuous process.
It reminds us that the journey to a truly free and responsible press is ongoing, always adapting, always evolving.
It is. And here's something interesting to consider. Right now, India doesn't have a dedicated governing body that focuses solely on press freedom.
That is interesting. So unlike, say, the All India Press Council, which has a broader mandate, there's no single entity that's solely responsible for protecting press freedom.
That's right. It definitely raises some questions about the future of journalism in India.
It does make you think, how will this framework evolve in the years to come? This has been such a great discussion. The story of the post-independence press in India is incredible. So much growth, resilience, and a never-ending pursuit of truth and accountability.
It is. What stands out to you most about this period?
I'm struck by the sheer tenacity of the press in those early years. All the challenges they faced, yet they never wavered in their commitment to informing the public and holding those in power accountable. They really helped shape the India we see today.
They did. And their legacy continues to inspire journalists today.
It does. It's a reminder that the fight for press freedom is never truly over. It needs constant vigilance, a dedication to truth, and the courage to speak truth to power.
Well said. It leaves us with a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same. We've just scratched the surface today, but it's a great foundation for understanding how the press in India has evolved.
And I know I'm eager to dig deeper. We'll be back soon to explore the implications of these developments and what they mean for the future of journalism in India. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a like so you don't miss it.
And for our UPSC aspirants, remember, connecting these historical dots to contemporary issues is crucial for your preparation. As we delve deeper, it's important to remember something, right? History, it's not just about remembering dates and events. It's about understanding the currents, those forces that are still shaping our world today.
Absolutely. Especially for our listeners preparing for the UPSC exams, making those connections between historical developments and what's happening now is crucial.
It's true. I mean, think about it. The challenges the press faced back then, things like censorship and attacks on journalists. Sadly, these issues are still very much alive in the 21st century.
Yeah, it's disheartening to see those patterns repeating. But understanding the historical context can help us fight for press freedom even today.
Exactly. And our UPSC aspirants, by really grasping how media has evolved, how technology plays a role, and all those debates around freedom of expression, well, that gives them a much deeper understanding of Indian democracy and its complexities.
It's about connecting the dots, seeing how the past informs the present. It helps us be better citizens, more aware, and better advocates for a free and fair press.
Right. And before that little break, we were talking about something pretty interesting, how India currently doesn't have a dedicated governing body that's solely focused on press freedom.
Yeah, that was a thought-provoking point. It does raise some questions about where journalism in India stands now and where it's headed. What are the implications of that absence? Does it make the press more vulnerable?
Well, it's a complex issue for sure. There's a lot of debate and discussion around it. Some people argue that having a dedicated body would provide a stronger, more focused defense of press freedom. Others think that the current framework we have, with the constitutional guarantees and institutions like the Press Council, is enough.
It's a tricky situation with no easy answers. And for those listening who are prepping for the UPSC, I think highlighting those questions and acknowledging the nuances is really valuable. It shows a deeper understanding.
Definitely. Critical thinking is key. It's not just about knowing facts. It's about looking at them from different angles, considering various perspectives, and then forming well-informed opinions.
Which leads us to the bigger picture.
Uh-huh.
What does this whole evolution of the press in India tell us about how democracy has unfolded in the country?
It's quite a reflection when you think about it. The growth of the press, its struggles, the laws that were put in place, the institutions that were created, they all mirror the journey of Indian democracy itself.
Like looking into a mirror, right? It's been a journey with progress, setbacks, and a whole lot of adaptation along the way.
It has. And the press, with its pursuit of truth, accountability, and its role as a platform for diverse voices, it really embodies the ideals of a democratic society.
It does.
Mm.
But the challenges it's faced, those attempts to silence dissenting opinions or control the narrative, that highlights how fragile those ideals can be and how important it is to protect them.
Right. It's a reminder that democracy isn't something you achieve and then it's done. It's a constant process that demands active participation, constant safeguarding, always evolving.
And the press plays such a crucial role in that process.
Absolutely.
Thinking about that, how is the press navigating this incredibly fast-changing media landscape of the 21st century? The internet, social media, this constant deluge of information. It's a whole new world.
Oh, it is. And this is where things get really interesting, both for journalists and for anyone studying how media and democracy are evolving.
Now you got my attention.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the key challenges and opportunities that the press is grappling with in this digital age.
Well, the internet has opened the floodgates when it comes to information. It's something we couldn't even have imagined just a few decades ago. Now, anyone with a smartphone can be a publisher, a broadcaster, a commentator.
Right. It's led to this explosion of voices, this constant stream of information, some good, some not so good.
It's both exciting and overwhelming, wouldn't you say? So much to sift through, so many different points of view.
It is. But with it comes the risk of misinformation spreading, of people getting trapped in echo chambers, and of propaganda being disguised as news. How's the traditional press adapting to this new reality?
They're moving quickly, they're embracing those digital platforms, trying out new ways of telling stories, and finding ways to cut through the noise to deliver reliable information that's been fact-checked.
It's like they're having to reinvent themselves while staying true to the heart of what journalism is all about.
That's it. It's about holding on to those core principles: truth, accuracy, and accountability.
Exactly. What do you think are some of the biggest hurdles they're facing?
I think a major one is the erosion of trust. In the digital world where anyone can publish anything, it's harder than ever to separate fact from fiction.
That's worrisome. Trust is the foundation for any credible institution, and that's especially true for the press. So how can they rebuild that trust in this age of misinformation and skepticism?
It's a multifaceted challenge. Transparency is a big part of it. Being open about where their information comes from, their methods, even acknowledging any potential biases. It's about showing their work, so to speak.
I like that. Transparency builds trust. It's about showing your audience that you're committed to the truth, even when it's complicated or makes people uncomfortable.
It is. Collaboration is also essential. Partnering with fact-checking organizations, working with other media outlets to cross-verify information, and pooling resources to conduct in-depth investigations.
It's about recognizing that in the digital age, the fight for truth and accuracy requires a team effort.
Exactly. And it's not just about debunking what's false, it's about actively promoting media literacy.
So, giving people the tools to be critical consumers of information, to question their sources and to evaluate evidence, building a society that's resistant to manipulation.
That's the goal. And that's where education comes in. We need to equip young people with the skills and knowledge they need to navigate this incredibly complex information landscape.
It's not about shielding them from information. It's about empowering them to think for themselves. I love that.
It is about empowerment. It's about fostering a culture where truth, evidence, and reasoned debate are valued.
It seems we've come full circle. Back to those ideals that were so central to the press in India. The commitment to truth, the platform for diverse voices, and that watchdog role holding power to account.
And those ideals, they're more relevant than ever in this digital age.
So where does this leave the press in India? Looking ahead, with all the challenges and rapid technological change and the erosion of trust, it's a lot to consider.
It is a time of great uncertainty, but also immense opportunity. I truly believe that the press in India, with its history, its resilience, and its commitment to public service, is ready to navigate these new challenges.
I'm optimistic too. It's a story that's still being written. It'll be so interesting to see how this next chapter unfolds.
It will. And for our listeners, especially those preparing for the UPSC exams, the key is to remember this. The evolution of the press isn't just a historical event that's over. It's an ongoing process that continues to shape India today.
It's about understanding the past to navigate the present and shape the future.
You got it. And recognizing that the fight for a free and responsible press is a fight worth having. It's a fight for truth, for accountability, and ultimately for the very heart of democracy.
Those are powerful words, and they remind us what's at stake. We've explored the challenges and the triumphs of the press in India, but now it's time to look forward. What can we learn from the past as we navigate this ever-evolving media world?
That's the big question we'll tackle in our final segment. Stick with us as we wrap up our deep dive with some concluding thoughts on this fascinating topic.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the Indian press. It's been quite a journey, right? We've seen how it's evolved, adapted from those early days after independence, right up to the digital age.
A story of resilience and an unwavering commitment to truth, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And as we wrap things up, I'm really curious to hear your concluding thoughts. What are the key takeaways you want our listeners, especially those preparing for UPSC exams, to think about?
I think the most crucial point is this: the evolution of the press. It's not some event that happened in the past and it's over. It's an ongoing process, something that's still very much shaping India today.
It's not just about memorizing dates and events for an exam. It's about understanding how those historical developments continue to impact us.
That's it, exactly. I mean, think about it. For those studying for the UPSC, if they really analyze how the press has changed over time, that can give them such a deeper understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing Indian democracy today.
It's like drawing a line between the past and the present, seeing those patterns continue and change. So how does that historical understanding help us navigate this really complex media landscape we have today?
Well, think about the challenges the press faced before. Things like censorship and that constant fight for freedom of expression. Those offer some valuable lessons for navigating the digital age.
Makes sense. The digital age has its own unique set of challenges, doesn't it?
It does.
Misinformation, echo chamber, it's like a whole new battleground for truth and accountability.
You could say that. And understanding how the press navigated those same kinds of challenges back then can offer a guide for journalists and media consumers today.
So it's about learning from the past to be better equipped for the future. What specific lessons do you think are most relevant now from the history of the Indian press for dealing with the digital age?
Well, one really crucial one is the importance of vigilance. You see, that fight for press freedom, it never really ends. It demands constant effort, a real dedication to those democratic values.
It's easy to forget that press freedom isn't a given. It's something we need to actively defend, especially now in the digital world where things can spread so quickly.
Exactly. Another key lesson is about adaptability. Think about how the press had to evolve with each new wave of technology. Printing presses, radio, television, and now the internet. That ability to change and grow while staying true to the core values of journalism, that's essential for surviving in the digital age.
So it's about embracing those new technologies and platforms while holding on to those core principles, like truth, accuracy, and accountability.
Exactly. And it's not just about the press adapting, it's about us as citizens adapting too. We need to become more thoughtful, more critical about the information we consume. We need to hone our media literacy skills so we can really evaluate what we're seeing online.
It's about being active participants.
Oh, yeah.
Not just passively absorbing everything that comes our way. So how can we, as individuals, contribute to a more informed and responsible public discourse? What can we do to promote media literacy?
Well, there are a few things we can all do. First, be critical of the information we come across. Question the sources, double-check facts, seek out different perspectives. Don't just settle for the first thing you see.
Sounds like good advice for life in general, right?
It is. Second, support those credible news organizations out there, the ones that are putting ethical journalism and fact-checking first.
Makes sense. It's about being mindful, both about what we're consuming and where we're getting it from.
Exactly. And lastly, encourage open and respectful conversations about the role of media in our society. The more we talk about these things, the better prepared we'll be to face the challenges and seize the opportunities that this digital age brings.
It's a call to action. It's about realizing we all have a role to play in creating a media landscape that's healthy and informed. This has been a truly fascinating exploration.
It has.
We've journeyed through the history of the press in India, from those early days after independence to this rapidly changing digital world.
I hope it sparked a bit of curiosity for our listeners, especially when it comes to this vital part of Indian democracy.
It definitely has for me. It's an evolving story, and understanding that history is so important as we look ahead. A big thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep engaging with the world around you. Remember, folks, understanding the past is key to building a brighter future. Stay curious out there. And we'll catch you on our next deep dive. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating explorations.